On behalf of the Work Better Now team, I'd like to welcome everybody to Working Better Now, where I get to sit down with a business leader. And today I am thrilled to be joined by LeiLani Quiray, founder and CEO of Be the Change HR. LeiLani, thanks so much for joining us, and it's great to see you.
I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Let's jump right in. Tell us a little bit about Be the Change HR.
Yeah, Be the Change HR is an outsourced human resources consulting firm. We are also a social impact organization. So I'll quickly talk about the HR side. We work with small businesses who usually don't have a human resources department. And if they do, they need help with their HR. And so they will outsource all or some of their human resources to us. My team is comprised of 10 wonderful HR professionals with 15 or more years experience. And then we've got people who have specialties on the staff as well. And then the social impact side is myself and everyone on the team. We deliver job readiness classes and coaching to sex trafficking survivors. So we dedicate a percentage of our top line revenue to that program. And that's why we're called Be the Change HR.
Gotcha. So I want to ask you about the social impact piece first. So I guess when you are bringing people onto the team, I'm guessing that they're not only signing up for what Be the Change HR is doing with clients, but for the mission in general.
Yeah, it's part of the job description. One of the first questions we ask is, how does volunteerism play a role in your life? And then the follow-up is, are you open to this? Because to put yourself in front of a trauma survivor, it can be very exposing for the person. And so everyone on my team goes through trauma-informed training and vicarious trauma training, but still, it's working with someone who's been through such difficult times and being present for them and helping them along their path.
Absolutely amazing. And did you start the company with the social impact piece as well? Was that there day one?
It was there on day one, but like many business owners, it wasn't as put together as it is today.
Right.
So what I was doing on day one was I'm going to put together HR and philanthropy under one roof in this business. It's been called Be the Change HR from the get-go, because I've always done that workplace readiness and job readiness volunteer work about a decade prior continuously. So I was I want to try to figure out how to mash these two together. It wasn't until year one that I even was oh, wait a second, I can take these courses that the nonprofits do, create one for us and deliver it, in-house to a nonprofit directly to them versus having the nonprofit that does the workplace readiness, reach out to them. So that was how I formulated that piece. And then when I started hiring employees, it was this is going to be part of your role. You're just going to participate in this as a facilitator, as a coach, to really drive this forward of helping people who have been through terrible, terrible times, the skills necessary to find that healthy, gainful employment.
It's amazing to me on so many different levels, obviously on a human level, but even from a business strategy perspective, finding talent to me is harder than finding clients, right? And you now just differentiated yourself from everybody else in the market, not to mention your services are quite unique. I think that's amazing.
Thank you. It's always been something I'm really, really passionate about. And I didn't even know what a social impact organization was when I started the business. It wasn't until again, a year into it, someone's oh, you have this thing. And I'm what? What's a social impact firm? And really started evangelizing us as that. I mean, that's what we do. And then for the part you were talking about finding talent, this is so true. It is hard to find great talent. But I always say this is you position yourself before you're even starting, right? To make sure that you're a company of choice, that you've got great culture, that you look good to the public eye when they're searching for you online, so that you can really attract those great people to work for you, which I feel so fortunate that I have. I cry at least twice a year about how amazing my team is. They're just fantastic, fantastic individuals.
Let's give some credit to yourself as well, because you and all of the other entrepreneurs out there, we create something from nothing. And then when we get to do it in a way where we're kind of living our life mission, it's even that much more amazing, right?
Yeah.
Speaking of which, tell us about your background. How did you get from college or wherever you grew up from to starting Be the Change HR?
Yeah, I started doing payroll when I was 16. I worked for a CPA 16 to 18. After school, I've always done human resources. There's nothing else. There was a small stint where I wanted to take a break. I was a box girl at a winery. They looked at me and said, "You don't look like you can lift a case, but we're going to hire you anyway." I found out later, because my background was in HR, they're "We were afraid not to hire you because we said that to you." So I did have a stint where I at 120 pounds was carrying around wine cases for just like I wanted to break. But I've done nothing but human resources my entire career. And I've also only done it where businesses didn't have HR, and I was the one coming in and building it from the ground up. So I have all this like on the job education, job after job, where it was like, okay, you're our first HR person. I'm like, all right, I'll just figure this out. And so it pairs so well with how the business is, because typically our clients, we are their first HR, their first, foray into this. And if they do have an HR department, typically they need some augmented support from us. But yeah, I have done, for the most part, I have done nothing but human resources my entire career. And then in 2010, I started volunteering at a nonprofit called Working Wardrobes. And that's where my job readiness coaching started, with a nonprofit where I would go into safe houses and people who are recovering from addiction or coming out of incarceration. And I would teach these 8-week courses to, groups of women, to teach them, okay, job readiness skills. And that's where that piece comes from.
Amazing. And what was the impetus to starting the firm?
So this isn't my first business I started, and entrepreneurs out there, you know how that goes. It's like I failed a couple of times before. My first consulting firm was when I was 25, and I named it after Elle Woods and Legally Blonde. And that only lasted 9 months. But so this is my third business, and I had a year, I was in an executive role. And I was just fed up. I was fed up with two things. Listening to other people. I mean, when you own a business, it's like, I feel like we're all the same. It's like, don't tell me what to do. So, listening to other people and disagreeing with how they ran the company, right? How unhealthy it was. And I wanted to create my own thing, and then the other was like, I have this great idea. I want to do it. And so my last in-house job was extremely toxic. And it took that type of environment to shove me out of it. I took a 3-month sabbatical. And at the end of that, I was like, you know what? I'm going to stop making other people money. I'm going to make it for myself. I'm going to build this firm, and I just burn the ships. There's no going back. And I'm proud to say we just celebrated 6 years.
Amazing.
And and the biggest piece to me, and I always get a little bit teary-eyed, is the impact that we get to make. On top of being wonderful HR consultants, we also make this impact on the workplace readiness side.
It's an amazing story. And I give you so much credit for not just for the social impact piece, but you did what you wanted to do. Like you just said, I'm forget toxic. I want to do things my way, and I'm going to do it with this social impact piece. And you pulled it off. I mean, you're over the hump now. So it's an amazing story.
Thank you.
I know you're rapidly growing. You're bringing on new clients all the time. When you bring on a new client, more often than not, what is it that they're not doing that they should be doing? What is it that they're doing that they shouldn't be doing? And then what's the benefit of the impact that you're making when they start working with you?
Yeah, I mean, the clients that we have, there's just no way that they can build an HR program, like we can. And so it's like when they come in the door, we don't know what we're going to get. So we onboard them all the same way. So we have an onboarding process. We take care of the handbook, which I can argue almost every single business out there probably needs to update their handbook. So we just get that out of the way, so we don't even have to have that conversation. And then the other piece is a checkup, where we look under the hood of a business. And every business is different of the things that we find, both compliance and strategy, that really need a tune-up. And so on the compliance side, there's the, basic things of like, are you filling out the right forms? Are you paying people properly under the FLSA? Like, what are the red flags that we want our owners to know and our stakeholders of like that could get them down the road? And then the strategy pieces, and this is a lot of times the pain point that the company is feeling and why they've come to us. And that is, we're losing a lot of employees. We can't find the right talent. We're having issues in the organization. We've had 3 investigations in the last year. We don't know what's going on. And so on that side, it's like, okay, it's really overall building a happy, healthy workplace. But what segment of HR is that, right? Is it the onboarding process? Is it the culture? Is it the engagement? Is it the performance management program? And so looking at those 2 things, we can figure out, okay, what's the roadmap for the future for this org and how we can help them.
But more on the cultural side, fixing the cultural side, because I think I mentioned to you, I just did a webinar this morning, and one of the questions that came in is said something like, my culture is really not that good. How do I fix it quickly? So when you're coming in and a company does have a culture that's, let's just say, not optimal, what are some of the more common ways that a company can work on improving the culture?
One, I'll say personally to all my owners that I don't typically just say to a client's face and then the other is like, okay, the strategy. So a different strategy. So the first thing I will always say is when someone says that, I'm like, okay, you got to look at like yourself, and everything trickles down from the top. So I make the joke, it's a serious joke, everybody. You need a coach and a therapist, like fix your shit. So you don't bring that, to everyone in your organization. And the second is, okay, strategy. It's like rolling out. It doesn't have to be that complicated. You can always hire us, but like you could Google it too. So you could say, okay, I want to do like a 10 question, engagement or happiness survey and ask people, do you like your job? Do you think you're being paid fairly? Do you make friends at work? Like these types of things that will all be markers of, okay, where in this is the company really like having high marks on it? It's not okay here. And if it's pay, then you tackle that. If it's communication, which like a lot of times it's the communication, you tackle that. So those are two of my suggestions for you that are somewhat easily done. One, call BetterHelp and then do an engagement survey.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense when you think about it. You can have businesses are even around for 20 years where a business owner had a better way of doing something, right? And they had a better service or a better product, but they never really thought about the fact that, all right, as we grow, it's not going to be about me, and the culture is going to be important, because if we can't get good people and keep them happy, it's going to, the very least, it's going to limit your growth, not to mention lead to a bunch of other problems.
Exactly.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of, other than working with companies like you, there's not a lot of training out there. Nobody tells business owners you got to really focus in on this. I guess that's a good segue to my next topic. I don't even know if it's a question. So to me, I speak a lot about there's a talent crisis going on and why that is and what are some of the things you can do about it. I'm starting to think that companies in general, and I'm not talking about large businesses, we don't really care about them. We love small and mid-sized businesses. But I'm starting to think that companies have to rethink how they look at talent, how they attract it, how they retain it, how they keep everybody happy. Life balance equation is shifting. What's your take on that? Are things changing, and how so?
We've been through a gauntlet and we're still in it of like constant change. The pandemic, for better or worse, completely changed what the climate and the environment and the expectations, and I think really like turned the tide from employers truly being in control to employees. And I would argue, even if not popular, that it should have always been that way, right? We should build organizations, for the most part, I'll put an asterisk next to this, that takes care of its people, and that's the primary focus when you bring employees on board, because you're responsible for them. So yeah, I agree. It is hard to find talent. It's hard to find great talent. And now the climate is completely changed. We've got a new generation in there. I feel like when every new generation comes in, they get made fun of. So sorry, Gen Z, but it's you now, the millennials, we get a break. But the part in, attracting talent and in being a leader and in being an entrepreneur is educating yourself on that, instead of brushing, like, I'm not going to use like gender neutral language, and I'm not like these Gen Zers, like, oh, they just complain all the time. It's like, it's not going to work for you in the long run, because they're going to eventually be a majority of the workforce. So instead, let's take the viewpoint of like, just continue to educate yourself, to understand the people that you're working with, to be a great leader. And then I think with that like mindset and understanding, formulate a plan of, okay, how are you, now that you know that and you're taking that to heart, how are you going to attract your talent?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. When my partner and I started Work Better Now, one of our core values, our first core value, I'm looking at it over to the side here, it's on the wall, is put our talent first. And the idea is very simple. It doesn't mean that they're always right, by the way. It just means we're going to put them first in front of our clients. Because if we put our talent first and we treat them well, they will treat our clients well. It's just a very simple way of thinking about it. And I do think that a lot of business owners, so like us Gen Xers, it's definitely a little bit of a shift. I would just wonder, like, did anybody complain about us, the Gen X workforce, when we got into the?
Yes, Gen X here. I don't remember that. I don't
remember it either.
The internet and social media wasn't so quick to make videos about these types of things and make fun of us. So, we're now in the category of being called a boomer instead, even though we're not, right? You do something that's old and they're like, okay, boomer. You're like, I'm not a boomer, but okay, I get it. I get what you're saying.
Yeah. LeiLani, when you are not working, what do you like to do?
Crazy things. So I was just talking to someone about this. I'm like, okay, so I like to hike, but I'm an ice climber. My favorite outdoor activity in the winter is climbing ice. I love hiking mountains for long periods of time solo. And I'm also a triathlete. So I just finished up my season. Last season I did a sprint, a couple Olympic distances, and then an Ironman 70.3. So I'm on break. I'm just doing yoga, normal exercise until February of next year, where I'll start my next training cycle.
Amazing. And really quick, what is ice climbing like?
So pausing like, well, it's cold, but if you dress appropriately, it's okay. Except I'll give you some ice climbing lingo. There's something called the screaming barfies. It's exactly what it sounds like. While you're climbing vertical, it's mostly vertical ice, and it's rated ice, waterfall ice 1, 2, and 3. And the 3 is the hardest, 1 is the easiest. There's 4 there too. But you're climbing basically vertically with these ice picks, and these, I call them Wolverine feet, but they're your crampons, your ice crampons that go into the ice. Sometimes they have only 1 point. And if your hands are up too long while trying to climb something and the blood is rushing out of them, once you put your hands down and the blood rushes back, something happens to you, possibly called the screaming bar phase. And it means it hurts so bad that you want to scream and throw up.
Lovely.
Yeah, it's a lovely time. I love it when that happens. I'm like, yeah, I'm really living right now. This hurts.
That is, I'm wondering if that's more about ice climbing that I actually cared to know. But thank you so much for sharing. LeiLani, where can people find out more about you and Be the Change HR?
Yeah, you can head to our website, bethechangehr.com. There you will find links to all of our socials on the bottom of the page. You can sign up for our newsletter, or you can book a consult with our team to talk about our services.
Fantastic. LeiLani, thanks so much for joining us today. And thanks for everybody for watching and listening. And we'll see everybody soon.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Bye, everybody.